Hello everyone, this is Josh Kessler from the Monroe County Public Library. Today I'm going to be talking about Blender. Once again, I've talked about it before, but since it's such a versatile program, there are many things that you can do. And today I'm going to talk about 2D animation. So to begin, you have to have the program installed, and once it's open, you can just hit 2D animation here, and this is going to put us in a default view. And you have a set of tools on the left here where you can draw by default. There's an eraser, you can make lines and things like that. So if we draw, I'm just using my mouse free hand here. I don't have a drawing tablet that I'm using. So it's not going to be super smooth, but you can see that now I have a line. So if we want to get rid of those, I could just Control Z or Command Z. And something that's probably the most effective whenever we're setting up an animation is to be able to imagine what you're creating in space. And what I mean by that is we obviously have a layer here on top that we can draw on. However, if we wanted to be able to visualize things a little bit easier, we generally want to work in layers like we do with something like Photoshop. So what we're looking for here is this little green thing on the side. It says Object Data Properties. I'm going to click on that, and what that's going to do is take us into our Layers menu. And you can see I have a Layers menu here. It says Lines, Fills, and then various small icons to the right. And these are much like Photoshop, so we have something where we can create masks if we want to. We can do onion skinning, which I can get back to later. We can show or hide layers. We can lock them. And then right here we can add or subtract layers. And there's also a little context menu here, Layer Specials, and I'll be using that here in a bit to duplicate a layer. So the way that I worked in my workflow here was I have one called Play, because that's where I'm going to make my animation. I'm going to make one called Plan, because that's where I'm planning everything. And the way that I generally like to work with this, after toying around with it a little bit, is to have my plan area, my play area, and then add a floor area as well. Another thing I like to do is down here in the bottom in this in our timeline and dope sheet area, you can change the end frame to 100. And the reason why I'm changing it to 100 right now is because I can think of things as portions of 100%. So if we have an animation that starts from the left to the right, and we know that it's going to be 100% timeline because that's complete time, maybe like a quarter of the way through, if we have something start here, we want it to be a quarter of the way through, and so on and so forth. So you end up with quarter pieces of a whole. That may not make a lot of sense right now, but you'll be able to see probably a little bit better what I'm talking about here in just a moment. So with the plan area, what I'm going to do is duplicate that by clicking the context menu and duplicating that. And what I'm going to do is make an area called floor, because I don't want to have to redraw the floor every single time in my animation. So let's go ahead and add a line, and that's on the left menu there, as you can see. And then once you're done making the line, just by clicking and then dragging, you hit enter, and you'll see there were little yellow dots on the end, and now they're gone. And now I have a floor here. It may not be completely flat or level, but that's not really going to affect our animation too much. So now that we have our floor area, I'm going to go ahead and lock it, and we're going to leave it in view for the entirety of the animation. And you know what, I'm actually going to lock my play area as well, because we're going to come to that layer, and we have to click on the layer that we want to manipulate. So as in Photoshop, you have separate layers here. So I'm going to go in my planning area, and Now I can actually draw on the canvas. I'm going to switch to the drawing tool. It's called a grease pencil in Blender here. And I'm going to think about what I want to do. There's a classic animation exercise that people do where they animate a bouncing ball. So you have a ball and you want to make it bounce. You can once you create it, you can say, well, it's gonna fall down. It's gonna maybe hit the ground. It's gonna bounce up, maybe a little less high, and then it'll bounce off the screen or something like that. So I'm gonna go ahead and place this circle by hitting Enter or Return, and then remove it because I can't. I know what I want to do here. So my circle's not removing for some reason. I'm not sure. I probably have something selected that I'm not noticing. So I'm gonna just erase this guy here. And so you can see, like in the animation, this actually works like you would expect it to. So you have a pencil, but you also have an eraser. And let's just say that that's erased enough as it is. We'll just use this as maybe another reference point. And say, like, we're going to start our ball bounce here. And then let's say that it bounces somewhere down here, hits the floor, bounces up a little less high, and kind of arcs this way before bouncing up again to go somewhere over here off the page. So with that plan in mind, we can actually start drawing. So I'm actually going to lock the plan layer, and I'm going to change the opacity, which is underneath the layer menu, down a little bit lower, so we don't necessarily see the full effect of these lines, but they're still there for reference, and you can turn that up or down, whatever your preference is. I'm going to leave it about there. Then click on my play area. I'm going to unlock it, and now we're starting from section 1. And this is the first frame of our little animation. So one thing that I just did there was I clicked the stroke menu in the scene selection, and that's important because it'll actually show you the keyframes on the dope sheet. You can also do that down here where you see grease pencil. If you're off of that, you just click this little icon here, and let's say you actually got the action editor and now you're not seeing your keyframes. Just click this and click grease pencil, and suddenly they'll be there. You can also click the stroke in the upper right hand corner. So let's start. I'm not good at drawing circles even freehand, but with a mouse, it's probably definitely not going to be possible. So on frame 1, let's say we're starting here with this circle, and then let's say this is where the 100% aspect comes in. So I'm going to hit enter to place this circle, and say a quarter of the way through the thing, so at 25%, maybe we want our circle to be right here. And again, I'm making it roughly the same size because we want things to look as uniform as possible and make it seem like it's the actual same object that you're working with. So I'm going to hit enter there, and we're going to say let's go forward just a little bit more. Say that we know that the ball's there now, and you can pull these yellow handles off the circle to resize it. I'm just going to get it a little bit closer, and that's probably good enough. Something you may have noticed there, actually, this is important, is that you can still see the previous circle I made, and if I move earlier in the scene, you'll be able to see the first circle I made and then the next circle. And this is called onion skinning. And it's basically just so you can have a reference for where your next keyframe is going to be. So right now we're in between these two, and we know, if we're placing another ball here on a separate frame, that we have a circle here and a circle there, and now we have a good reference for where this circle's at. So let's go forward a little bit more, we're just going to say that, in this frame, the ball's here. And then let's go forward here. And I need to make my circle a little bit bigger. So let's move it over this way. And now we're going to go forward another couple frames. Well, several dozen frames. And then make our ball here. And then finally, let's make another ball object right here. So now, I'm going to go back to the beginning, and I'm going to turn off the onion skinning because we don't want to know where the next object is. I mean, we could, it doesn't really matter, but let's turn it off so you can see it as it happens. And I'm actually going to turn off the view of the background as well, our planning area, so you're not seeing the axis where we planned out our ball. And then down here in the playback area, the timeline, I can hit this play animation button or hit the space bar. I'm going to hit the space bar. And you can see at each of the points that we made, we have a ball doing some kind of action in there. And really, we can make that be our animation. It would admittedly not be a very good one. So, we can keep that the same, but let's turn back on the onion skinning, and I want to show you something. So now if we go, let's go to the middle of these two, and we have a reference here. So let's go ahead and make a circle in between these two because we want a little bit more action, let's say, to where it looks like there's a little bit more consistency. Now I can hit enter to draw the circle, and then I can go in between these because I see like a wide gap here, and I can see that what happens in between these two is that the ball is going to bounce from here to there. So let's draw a little middle reference for this, and we're going to make it a little bit bigger. And then let's say hit enter to place the object, and maybe let's go here, and I'm going to place another circle just to kind of give it some motion. And let's go to the beginning so you can kind of see how that works at the beginning versus the end. And turn off the onion skinning to hide where we're going to be. And hit play here again. So you can see definitely at the beginning of this animation that there's a lot tighter bounce than there is at the end. And that's because we put in more of these keyframes. They're more reference points for the object. So at the beginning you have here, and then you have the next ball, the next ball, the next ball, and at the end you see these wide spaces. Now we can actually make this look a little bit better because it's a little bit slow still at this point. So what I'm going to do actually is go down to the dope sheet here and click on my first keyframe, click on the last keyframe, and hit the S button, which is kind of a universal button in Blender to scale. And I'm just going to go to the right because I want to make this a little bit shorter. And making it shorter, incidentally, is going to make it play it a little bit faster. So now, if I'm at the beginning and I hit the play button, you can see that there's quite a bit more action. It's a lot faster. And probably what I want to do is I actually kind of want to scale it down a little bit more. So I still actually have the points on the dope sheet selected, so I'm going to hit S again, and I'm really going to pull it in this time, and I'm going to shorten my frames here too, so I'm going to make it to where it's a little bit closer to the end of my animation. And let's go ahead and hit play and see how that looks. If I hit the play button, it'd work a lot better, so let's do that. Now you can see the animation taking place. And from here, you can go in and you can go into edit mode, and you can change the shape of your ball. You can scale it, you can rotate it. So if you want to make it look like it's kind of stretching in between the bounces, just go ahead and select the object you can either click on it or draw a box. And let's turn on our onion skinning so you can see where the previous one was. And let's go ahead and scale it by hitting S to scale it. And we're going to scale it in the Z-axis because that's the height. And so let's make this a little bit better, like right there. And then let's rotate it by hitting R. And now, this will probably be a little bit quick, but watch how it plays whenever we hit the play button now. You can see that at this frame right in here, that it's kind of like pulling down. And that's something that that happens in animation. So if something's falling, it kind of has an exaggerated stretching effect. And you can really go back and add these things. You can change your shapes, things like that. Really dig around in the different modes because you can sculpt, you can do more drawings, different shapes and things like that. And this is just scratching the surface. So once you get familiar with this tool, you'll be able to make as complex animations as you're willing to put time into.